Hello, rock stars. I am so excited to talk about music notation with you today. So, there's a fascinating history and culture behind music notation. And I want to talk to you about how we would write down music in the United States. And then I'll show you some different examples from around the world. So, notation is just a way for us to remember and for other people to get to play our music back. So if we create something, if we improvise, right, and we're like, oh, that was awesome. Imagine if there was no way to translate that to somebody else. It's just like the way we speak and the way we write, because we want to save things to be able to be repeated. So the way that we would read music in band, orchestra, piano, in the United States and now much of the world, with treble clef and bass clef is just a way for us to write down our musical thoughts and be able to repeat them. So we have to think about the melody, the notes in skips and in steps. So there's only 7 notes in our musical alphabet, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We can start anywhere and we can move up and down in skips and steps. So if we started our alphabet, A, B, C is the first lowest pitch of our xylophone. So we can walk up by steps: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and we're back at C. We could talk about moving by skips, right? C, E, G, B, D, all the way up, or steps: D, C, B, A. So to be able to move up and down the scale in skips and steps. Another instrument that I can show you our notation in is recorder. Now, we've all talked about the treble clef in recorder, right? It's a high-pitched instrument, so we write it in that treble clef, that G clef. And we can walk up the scale by steps, starting with C. We can move up by skips. And I can also show you on the guitar. So I'm trying to show you many different ways that we can think about pitch. Here's our A string. So I'm going to start you with A, and I'm going to walk up from A to A. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We're back to A, right? So thinking about the string as you move your fingers up. If you play an instrument, think about how you notate and play that instrument and how the sound changes from high to low. One more instrument that I wanted to show you with labels, excuse my transition, is my piano. So I've taped, we can think about it just like a xylophone, right? And we can play the pitches C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So lots of different visuals and ways for us to think about that musical scale. So we have 2 clefs that we work with. The high-pitched clef for flutes, clarinets, your right hand in the piano, all those high notes. The recorder, this is our G clef, and we can play with our G clef. The G, or the treble clef, wraps around that G. So it gives us that answer, right? Here is a G. And I'm going to, here we go. So when we play with the scale, we can move up by steps or by skips. So we have our G, A, B, C, D, E. We could move by skips. I'm going to go back to G. We could move up by skips: G, A, B, C, D, or down: G, F, E. Back to G. We also have the F clef, or the bass clef, for our low-pitched instruments. So some of you may already play an instrument that uses bass clef or F clef. So again, it just shows us these two dots are our big arrows saying this is F. So we have G clef, F clef, and we can move that note around. F, we can go down, F, E, D, C. Bring it back to F, we can go up, F, G, A, B, and play with those notes. So this is what's called, now this is like college material. This is called Western notation. So this is what we've kind of come up with. The United States uses it. A lot of countries in Europe use this. And then people all over the world, this is kind of that, that way that we can all communicate similarly through music, in music notation and the musical language. But I do want to show you some examples from history and from different cultures. Now, many people still use these notations. I know we have a student who uses a very different musical language to play his drum. And so he would be looking at something like this. So in Indonesia, there's an instrument called the Javanese gamelan. And it's almost similar to a xylophone or a metallophone, but they use numbers to be able to communicate their musical language, as well as some other symbols. Here is some Indian notation. You see the syllables, right? Sa, re, sa, pa. That's how they would communicate their musical language. Here's a Mongolian example of music notation. You can see the pitch go up and down the way it is drawn. So feel free to pause here and take a longer look at these notations. Here are some more. This is Gregorian chant. So an ancient way for religious music to be sung using the text in Latin and the notes. And you can see this was the beginning of what we think of when we think of music in treble and bass clef. We see those note heads, they're squares, and the stems going up and down the scale on the lines. The one in the middle is from Ethiopia. This is another type of chant. So this would be sung. And I need to move myself so you can see. This is Korean notation, and this is also pitch. This would be sung. So melodic notation. So just think about all these different ways, and you might play an instrument from your culture that uses a completely different way of writing and communicating your musical thoughts. So feel free to share those with me if you can think of a different way that you read music. Here is your job. We are going to use the treble or bass clef. Challenge yourselves, the G clef or F clef. And you are going to share a word that you can spell with A, B, C, D, E, F, or G. So some examples are bag, gab, which means to talk, bee, beg, cabbage. Can you think of any other words? You can either write the staff and write the word for me, or if you would like to play it on an instrument, if you have an instrument at home and would like to play that word for me, I would love to see some videos of that. So my example is bag, B, A, G. And you can simply write those little circles on the line, the note heads, to show me the melody B, A, G. I'm going to go back to the first slide, and you can pause it here and use this as an example. So remember, your job is to spell a word, a musical word that you can create. You can write it and send me a picture of the written form, or challenge yourself to play it on an instrument. You can use treble, G clef, or bass clef, F clef. So here are your arrows. This is G. We can go up or down the scale. And here is F. You can go up or down from F. Have so much fun. I cannot wait to see these examples. Have a wonderful rest of your week.